If you were a kid in the mid-90s, there is no way that you could exist without knowing who the Power Rangers were. This show took America and the world by storm and captivated every youthful mind on Saturday morning with its vibrant colors, constant martial arts battles with sparks flying everywhere, giant rubber-suited monsters, and superheroes that were powering giant mechs made to resemble prehistoric beasts and dinosaurs that combined together to create even greater mechs that would lay waste to the evil that was attacking the city, and then afterwards everyone would go hang out at the juice bar. Yeah, that's the kind of world I want to live in. We would practice some karate with Jason, learn some new technology with Billy, and get this strange feeling about Kimberly that no one could quite explain at the time until we got older and we suddenly came to realize that millions of boys all around the world were simultaneously developing their first crush on a girl. Which is a little unfair to Trini because I think she's very underrated, but I get it. Anyways, the fact that Power Rangers even worked as a series at all is kind of mind-boggling. If you're a big fan, I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't already know, but the gist of its incarnation is that Power Rangers comes from Japan, but the original show is a Japanese action kid show based on a bunch of mystical lore called Super Sentai. A team of superheroes, all with individually colored costumes, battle monsters for the fate of the world. Clearly, people watched this and knew that this was awesome, and basically part of the whole genre of these kind of giant rubber-suited monster stuff. Ultraman being one of the OGs, a superhero that grew to gigantic sizes in order to fight monsters, all done with that old-school suit and miniatures and explosions that were done with practical effects. A bygone era that I think should come back, goddammit. Put people in rubber monster suits again. But anyway, Super Sentai, awesome as it is not only in Japanese with Japanese actors and also relates more to the whimsy and sensibilities of a Japanese TV show. So instead of just doing a direct translation, they instead decided to take footage from it that they could use for the fight scenes, but then recasted all of the heroes outside of their suits and made brand new storylines that could fit into whatever the Japanese footage was. So basically, the episodes would start out with some wholesome, easy-to-digest for kids plot of the Rangers in human form hanging out, and then when the monster would attack, they would morph into the Power Rangers, and it would switch to the Japanese footage of the fight scenes. And they redid everything. They redid the storylines, the monster's intentions, changed the pumpkin monster into some rapping creature.
Well, you think that's something you can do? Well, I got some friends who'd like to meet you. Attack now!
I don't know, it was the mid-90s, and so many other things as well. It's actually incredibly impressive how well they managed to edit it all together, and this was back in the 90s. You have this wholesome, educational, let's teach the kids a lesson about something important, merged with the ridiculously violent martial arts fights with monsters, and somehow it all worked together. And yeah, I know it's not that violent, but compared to everything else on TV at the time and in the West, let me tell you, I remember specifically parents hating that their kids were watching Power Rangers because it was so violent. And they even add a line in the theme song that says the Rangers only use their weapons for defense, just to remind you that, hey, they're not that violent, they just have to defend themselves and save the world. So it makes sense. Save the world with giant swords and axes and sparks that fly everywhere as they jump in front of dozens of explosions. But man, as a kid, these things lit up your dopamine like nothing else. Every few seconds, something else crazy was happening, and the Power Rangers theme was blasting in the background. It just made you want to do backflips off your couch onto your morning cereal, and oh did I. The premise is very simple. It's obviously 5 teenagers with attitude are chosen to become the Power Rangers. Because. It doesn't really matter why, and it's not really talked about. They're just transported to the command center, and a big floating face named Zordon gives them power coins which allow them to transform into the Power Ranger. In the original team, you had Jason, the Red Ranger. He acted as the leader and was definitely my favorite when I was a kid, mostly because red was my favorite color, and I think that's how most kids pick their favorite Power Ranger, to be honest. You had Kimberly, who was the Pink Ranger, and she was your classic, generic 90s teen girl persona. You had Billy, who was the Blue Ranger, and he was the resident nerd of the group and into technology and inventing things. Zach was the Black Ranger, who was the cool kid with all the dance moves, and, yeah, Zach is black and the Black Ranger, but, you know, even the actor has talked about how proud he is of being the very first black superhero on American television, and I don't really think it's as sketchy as people make it out to be. People always make a joke out of it, but, you know, as a kid, you didn't really think about that. You just thought Zach was cool, and that's really all you needed. But then you have Trini as the Yellow Ranger. God damn it. Listen, actually, for this one too, there was a different actress that was cast originally who I believe was Hispanic that dropped out. But anyways, fun fact, the Yellow Ranger in the Super Sentai was actually a man. And you can't really notice that when they morph since they all have lean physiques, but the only defining detail that the Pink Ranger is a girl is that she gets a skirt, and the Yellow Ranger doesn't. But overall, what can I say? It was the 90s, it was a different time. But nobody really cared. We all just loved the Power Rangers. All of them, and all their variations, and their weapons, and their powers, and even the Americanized parts of the show had a lot of merit on its own. It taught lessons to kids like the importance of persevering and standing up for what's right, calling out bullies when they would show up, like Bulk and Skull. Bulk and Skull were annoying watching as a kid, but as an adult looking back, they're actually some of the best parts of the show, especially the human segments that don't involve the Rangers fighting. They had that iconic intro music, and every time that they would try to be dicks to the main characters, they would pay for it and wind up face planting into something. As the series went on, they actually had a few moments where you thought maybe they're not so bad deep down. I kind of have a soft spot for these guys, and I don't know, I just appreciate their character. The enemies of the show were also a trip. You have the main group in the beginning led by Rita Repulsa. I always wondered, even as a kid, if her boobs are actually that pointy. Like, do they go all the way through the metal that's encasing them? Is that why she's so cranky? I don't know. She's awakened on the moon after 10,000 years and decides that she wants to conquer Earth. Except the Power Rangers always manage to stop her. I love all of the henchmen too. These guys crack me up. You got Squat and Babu that are kind of like the B-team Bulk and Skull. And then you have Finster, who's responsible for creating all the monsters. He's pretty awesome. And then you have my boy Goldar. Dude, I love Goldar so much. He starts out acting like a generic bad guy, but as the show goes on, you kind of see how used and abused Goldar gets by all the main villains, and you kind of feel bad for him. He's literally just trying his best out here, and Rita keeps giving him no credit and no respect whatsoever. Nobody fights the Rangers as much as he does, and my boy is constantly putting his life on the line, and Rita doesn't give a shit about him. Also, he always has this doofy look and his doofy voice that I can't get enough of. It's kind of like he has a hard time thinking and he tries to sound intimidating as possible, but then just comes off super corny. It's fantastic. I just love this dude.
In a few moments, the Power Rangers will be astray.
But the crazy thing is, alright, so every single episode, it's basically the same. Rita makes Finster create a monster, he sends it down to Earth, it messes with our main characters or the town of Angel Grove in some way, and then they morph into the Power Rangers, start beating the crap out of the monster. Then Rita gets annoyed and makes the monster grow as she sends down her staff and it becomes the size of a skyscraper. Then obviously the Rangers need to call out their Zords and have them combine to form Megazord, and then they face the monster in an epic battle throughout the city. And somehow that city is always continuously rebuilt by the next episode. But you know, Rita kind of deserves to have her plans fail over and over again because, look, usually one monster, though they get defeated by the Rangers, it still causes them some relative difficulty. And it doesn't seem like Finster has much of a limit on the clay that he creates them from, so I always wondered, even as a kid, why doesn't Rita just send like 20 monsters or 50 monsters down to Earth at the same time from the very beginning? There would be no way the Rangers would be able to beat that many of them at once. But whatever. Maybe having cone boobs affect your problem-solving skills? I don't know. The best plot she ever came up with, though, was creating a Ranger of her own, and that is when Tommy was introduced. Rest in peace to the actor Jason David Frank, you were a legend. Tommy was the new kid and just as skilled in martial arts as Jason was. He was then turned to the evil Green Ranger, which resulted in a multi-part episode arc that basically just featured the Green Ranger continuously beating the ever-loving shit out of the Power Rangers. This guy was a true menace. He even destroyed the command center and took out their Zords on foot. Not to mention the fact that his Zord was a giant dragon that looked like a Mechagodzilla. It was crazy. But of course, eventually he was released from Rita's control and he became one of the good guys. And ever since, Tommy has been a staple of the Power Rangers lore, sticking with the franchise longer than any other actor or character. And the series would consistently evolve over time as well, introducing new villains like Lord Zedd, who had one of the coolest designs throughout the entire Power Ranger show, and this guy actually kind of looks scary if you're, a 4-year-old. He shows up, locks Rita away, and then he proceeds to take her place as he becomes the guy that sends one monster per episode. At least he's a lot cooler than those robot fuckers from Zeo, though. Oh, and there was the time where they bring Rita back and then Zedd falls under a spell and falls in love with her. Yeah, things got weird. but what did you expect? It's the Power Rangers. Sadly, though, eventually Jason, Zach, and Trini left the show, and they introduced new characters, Rocky, Adam, and Aisha, to take their place. I never thought Rocky or Aisha quite lived up to their counterparts, but Adam, on the other hand, I always thought was really cool. He's played by Johnny Young Bosch, who later went on to be a voice actor as well in anime like Trigun. He played Vash or Ichigo from Bleach. He always seemed like a really cool guy behind the scenes. The character of Tommy also got upgraded from Green Ranger to White Ranger, and then he became the leader of the entire group once Jason left. But it was rightfully earned, as Tommy was the strongest and had a lot of the same leadership qualities. Apparently the actors of these two behind the scenes really hated each other, and it's a shame because they're basically my two favorites. But this video is more of a nostalgic look back at the show, and not really about behind the scenes drama. If you want to know about that, I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube videos out there that do discuss it. But I'll tell you one major thing that always annoyed me. It's that the Power Rangers movie, the one that they made in 1995, the original Power Rangers the movie, it's not canon. Which is so weird, because this is the movie everyone remembers. It has the villain Ivan Ooze, who is the guy named Ivan that's made of ooze. But he's memorable. Everyone in my generation and below remember this movie so well. And the Rangers, they fight as bird henchmen, and then they have to travel to another planet to get their ninja upgrades, new Zords. They come back to settle the score, and all that. It's great. In the beginning, we casually see them skydiving, and then later on, they're rollerblading, of course, with all the knee and elbow pads on, so that they can show that they're a good example for all the kids that are watching. Yeah, they're brave enough to surf out of an airplane, throwing the parachute up at the last possible seconds, but they gotta have the elbow pads on when they rollerblade, just in case. But anyways, it's wild because in the show, all the stuff that happens in the movie happens in a different way. The new powers, the new Zords, they're all gifted in a different way. The Tengas don't belong to Ivan Ooze, and the fact that there's no mention or talk about Ivan Ooze at all in the show, he's not even a canon character. Instead, there's this robot guy named Ninjor. I don't know, I never liked this guy. But the even weirder thing is that the second Power Rangers movie, Power Rangers Turbo, you know, the movie that nobody remembers and nobody liked and it bombed like crazy at the box office, well, that movie not only is canon, but you have to have seen the movie to understand how it goes from Power Rangers Zeo to Power Rangers Turbo, or else you will be lost on how they got the turbo powers and that everything changed, and why this dumb little kid is suddenly the Blue Ranger and turns into an adult when he morphs. Like, how does that even work? What would he look like if he took his helmet off when he was in the adult form? Is he like a 10-year-old in a teenager's body? And besides, what's with that new antagonist? I thought Rita's boobs were bad, but this thing takes up half the screen. Actually, I'm not really complaining about that, but still. I don't know. The cool thing about the Turbo movie, though, is that Jason and Kimberly do come back, and they aren't Rangers in the movie, but they do get to fight, and we get to see a nice little Jason versus Tommy scene. I appreciated that. Anyways, back in like 2017, I was having a major life crisis, I'll tell you guys, and I was broken. I had tons of health issues, no money to my name, moved back in with my parents, no dating life to speak of. It was a bad time. And I decided to drown my sorrows in rewatching the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers until like 3 in the morning every single night. And was it as bad and pathetic as it sounds? Yes, absolutely it was. But for some reason, this re-exploration of my childhood was what I needed to put me into a good enough mood to get me primed to refocus on my life and recover. Watching this stupid, cheesy show with its ridiculously contrived plots of perseverance, facing your faults and bullies, training hard, working hard, believing in yourself, well, it kind of worked. And I just kept watching every night and smiling to myself as I found this new appreciation for the stupidity on the screen that I was seeing. I decided to watch until all of the original cast eventually left, which will take you from Mighty Morphin to Zeo into Turbo. And as I said, Zach, Jason, and Trini were the first ones to go. Then later on, Kimberly left and was replaced with Kat. Kat was alright, but the worst thing about Kimberly leaving is that Kimberly and Tommy had become an item, and since Kimberly was never coming back to the show, they had her break up with Tommy over a note that she sent him in the mail. Bro, this broke my heart as a kid, and it even breaks my heart as an adult. It's like the 90s text breakup. It's ridiculous. Then Billy was also demoted or promoted, however you want to look at it, as the technical guy in the command center, no longer a ranger, but still aiding the rangers until he eventually departs as well. We get some cool moments where Jason does come back, the original Red Ranger, as the Gold Ranger. Gold Ranger was fucking awesome. He had his own theme song, had a giant pyramid as his Zord. It was crazy. But anyway, the only one left at that point would have been Tommy, and he was the last original Ranger as he stays on board all the way till about halfway through Turbo, in which the entire cast is eventually replaced. But he does come back several times throughout the show's run, and even made a semi-recent appearance. One of the episodes is called Forever Red, which is something that I checked out and I really enjoyed. It's the Power Rangers Wild Force season. All the previous Red Rangers come back for one epic battle. Jason and Tommy are both here. Unfortunately, Rocky isn't. And look, even though I'm not the biggest Rocky fan, I still felt like he deserved to be here. But regardless, it's still a pretty good episode. And then you have the Dino Thunder season as well, where Tommy comes back for the whole thing. An older, more seasoned Ranger helping to guide the new team. They do a very specific episode for him where he has to face the demons of his past, which essentially means that he fights himself. He fights the Red Zeo, he fights the White Ranger, and eventually the original Green Ranger. And one of the funniest things, too, is that they had to hide all the actors' tattoos since, it's a kid's show. So Tommy is literally always wearing long sleeves the entire season. Remember skydiving and kung fu fights with swords and sparks and other weapons? Yeah, that's all fine, but tattoos are bad. If you didn't grow up with the Power Rangers, you'll probably never really understand it. Not the way that we did back then. And yeah, I know the show is ongoing, but I think a lot of its magic was in its beginning stages, where people didn't really know what the hell they were looking at, but we jumped on board anyway. The cheesiness and low budget of it, along with the 90s wholesome sitcom vibes, it made it feel so special. And that's what I think the reboot movie missed out on. Part of what makes Power Rangers so enjoyable is that it has this cheesy charm to it. Sure, you can give us big action and special effects, but trying to turn it into the next Hunger Games or Divergent series or whatever they were trying to do with that movie, it just didn't work. But I can see how a studio executive sitting in an office somewhere would think so. It's got to be bright, it's got to be over the top, it needs memorable henchmen and villains, and it's got to have a cast that you kind of wish were your best friends. It's got to have some actual martial arts choreography and not just CGI, but above all, it would need teenagers with attitude. Anyways, guys, that is my little trip down memory lane reflecting on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This video was actually a request video by a Patreon supporter of mine, William. Thank you very much for your donation. I appreciate it. And if you guys would like, my Patreon link is down below in the description, as well as my channel memberships, which are turned on. But if anybody would like to share their history or memories of the Power Rangers down below, please go ahead and say so. I would love to hear your stories. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like and comment to help it in the algorithm. And if you'd like to help support the channel on that deeper level, there is the Patreon and channel membership, like I said. Other than that, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.